And back here at home, streets are an issue plaguing the city of Shreveport, and it's been that way for decades. But folks we talked to say one street, a long and pretty busy thoroughfare throughout the city, is one of the worst in the city. KTBS 3's Keristen Holmes goes digging to see what's up with one stretch of Linwood and when will the people who live in that area finally see some relief. She has that in this ArkLaTex in-depth report.
So imagine every day you get ready to take yourself to work or drop your kids off at school, you gotta deal with stuff like that. That is what people on Linwood Avenue say they're tired of.
If people want to protect their car, they just avoid Linwood altogether.
Marcus Jones has lived in this area all of his life and says Linwood Avenue, especially through the Cedar Grove area, is horrible. We went driving along Linwood to see for ourselves, and it was pretty bad.
Everybody knows that Linwood is one of the most roughest streets in the city. You know, people actually avoid Linwood because of all of the barricades, as you see right here.
And those barricades have been in place for over a year with no immediate fix in sight. But the city of Shreveport is about to start fixing other parts of Linwood. $3.4 million will be used to repair Linwood from Burt Coons to right here on Mount Zion. But that's where the money runs out. But what about this part of Linwood, from Mount Zion all the way to 70th Street? Nothing's in the works to fix this, and Marcus says that won't work for this community.
Just shifts the buck from the councilman to the mayor, back and forth, and actually nothing gets done around here. People just gonna have to speak with their voice and even with their vote if necessary.
We spoke with Stephanie Lynch, who's the city councilwoman for the area. She says there are two options. The city could move forward with asphalt overlay for the road, which is a quicker and cheaper fix so they can get immediate relief, but that would be a downgrade for Linwood because right now it's a concrete road. Option number two, the community could wait for the issue to be placed on a bond to fund a concrete upgrade for Linwood, but this repair would require them to continue waiting until the ball could get rolling on a bond issue. We talked to city engineer Robert Westerman about it. Take a listen at what he had to say about asphalt versus concrete repair.
To do an asphalt repair, it would take approximately $500,000 to overlay that stretch of Linwood Avenue. Linwood has a lot of failed panels out there, cracks in the panels, shifted joints. If we were to overlay the road, these failed panels and shifted joints would simply be projected up into the asphalt surface.
Looks like asphalt would be like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound, and we have enough money for part of Linwood, but not all of it. So where does that leave Cedar Grove?
Mount Zion Road to 70th Street is approximately 2 additional miles of rebuilding that would be necessary. The cost for doing this rebuilding would run between $6.8 to $7 million, and currently we do not have available funding in order to do that work at this time.
At the end of the day, Marcus says something needs to be done.
This is a literal obstacle course. You're going from one lane to the other lane, you're missing potholes, you're missing buckles in the concrete. People are frustrated with this road.
Reporting for KTBS 3 News, I'm Keristen Holmes.
Well, do you want to sound off on what you think about what should happen next with Linwood's concrete roads and asphalt repair? Chime in because the city wants to hear from you. Councilwoman Stephanie Lynch is hosting a community meeting this Thursday, March 16th at Airport Park at 6 o'clock. The goal is to talk to the people in the district about what they need to see happening with Linwood and other issues affecting their community. Again, that meeting is Thursday night at 6 at Airport Park.
I will be penalized, actually. There'll be a small fee I'm going to have to pay at the end of the year for my taxes.
Kaylee Solano says she's ready for Obamacare to go because it's too expensive and she'd rather pay the penalties for not having it. Eddie Hamilton says Obamacare is helping to keep him healthy because he finally has insurance.
I just don't understand what they want to repeal it for and what's the big hurry to repeal it.
It's a debate rocking cities across the ArkLaTex, and some are taking the fight for either side to their elected official, as was the case in town halls all across America with Republicans, even right here in Louisiana with Senator Bill Cassidy. He says he heard the cries of the people.
We want the patient to have the power. We want power to go from Washington, D.C. back to the state.
And that is what Republicans can agree on, according to Senator Cassidy. Cassidy is heavily involved on a plan to replace Obamacare, unveiling a plan he worked on with 2 other Republican senators called a Comprehensive Obamacare Replacement Plan. Cassidy says the debate is good for figuring out what to do next. And for or against the American Health Care Act on the table right now, Cassidy says all Republicans agree on this.
The American people who are getting hammered with higher premiums under Obamacare are held harmless. Now that's going to take a while. That is a tide of rate increases coming in that we will not be able to stop overnight.
Right now, the American health care plan that's been proposed would get rid of individual mandates. It would also keep coverage for people with pre-existing conditions and allow kids to stay on their parents' plan until they're 26. It's also going to replace subsidies with capped tax credits. That gives more insurers the flexibility to write policies, but would then charge older Americans much more money than younger policyholders. And it will allow state Medicaid expansion until 2020. But after 2020, more than 400,000 people right here in Louisiana alone could lose their Medicaid health coverage. And across the nation, millions could lose their health coverage. Cassidy says all isn't lost.
I am personally looking for a way that we can find a way to pay for it and allow that Medicaid expansion, the Medicaid expansion dollars to keep coming to the state. Frankly, I would like those folks into private insurance plans a little bit differently structured than standard Medicaid.
When you put health care back into the hands of a state that's already got budget problems, like Louisiana's $300 million hole right now, can the state really afford to take on the added cost of these patients? It doesn't sound likely. Take a listen at what Cassidy had to say.
We have a very high poverty rate. And so if we are going to cover more people, it's going to be more of a drain on the state taxpayer. And so just to say, it's a little bit harder for us to do some stuff which richer states have been able to do.
To soften the blow, Cassidy says they have some time to figure it out, and they're hoping one industry in Louisiana picks back up.
Medicaid expansion coverage would continue through 2020. Hopefully by that time, oil prices are back up. The Haynesville shale is going full bore again. We have more tax revenue coming in.
But Cassidy says the overall plan is health care that works for everyone.
President Trump said he wants as many people covered as under Obamacare. So if that's your marching order, you try and figure out a way to do it. I do think there's a way to get there, but it's going to be a little bit of a struggle.
Reporting for KTDS 3 News, I'm Keristen Holmes. You can't always tell a difference from a traditional public school and a charter school from this point of view, but take a closer look, and then things start to stand out.
Really, it's a public school. Yeah, and we're funded just like any other public school.
That means charter schools are paid for with your tax dollars, but independently run. Buck McGee is an educational consultant for Pathways in Education. It's a charter school that specializes in students who didn't finish high school or need a second chance at an education. And this specialization is what Buck says sets his and all other charter schools apart from traditional public schools.
Charter schools are designed to give options to children who otherwise perhaps would not have an option.
But critics say not all charter schools are fulfilling their calling. Frederick Washington is a fan of public schools and an educational watchdog. He's been keeping up with what's going on around him in the world of education since he was a student at Booker T. Washington, a traditional public high school.
I believe that our public school system has to be preserved, but at the same time, we must work and come up with solutions on how to improve the public school system.
He says some charter schools in our area, namely Magnolia School of Excellence, isn't giving kids the real access that they need to go to the school.
You're requiring parents to be involved, which is not a bad thing, and if you're not allowing transportation and your school is not necessarily pedestrian or public transit friendly, then the concern is, are you addressing the challenges that you have said that you want to address? Many of our students come from backgrounds where their parents don't have the luxury of calling into their job and saying, hey, I need to volunteer.
We reached out to Magnolia, who didn't go on camera, but says that when the school first opened, buses were too expensive to provide. Members on the board of directors say as the school grows, they aren't opposed to adding buses to their amenities. A big draw to charter schools, both Frederick and Buck agree on, is the autonomy.
It gives you the wiggle room to go in and tweak the curriculum to meet their needs, and you operate independent of an elected board. So I think it takes away a lot of the bureaucracy.
But what happens if that charter school isn't successful?
Then you can close a charter.
Buck says the difference from traditional public and public charter schools is that it doesn't take decades to do something about a failing charter school.
Only recently are there pushes to, close those schools or do something about those schools, and which they've been failing our community for years.
But another place where Buck and Frederick agree is that more should be done for charter schools and traditional public schools to work together to meet the needs for every single student in Caddo Parish or wherever they live.
Can't just completely do away with the public school system, because the reality is the public school system still takes on those challenges that are not welcome elsewhere.
So when you're picking a school for your kids, get to know the differences or the specialty of that school and then match that with your child's needs. Then you need to shop around and find the best fit. You also want to check those schools' performance scores to see how kids actually do at that school and be prepared. If you go to a charter school that's underperforming and has to shut down, that can happen mid-year, and your student would then need to go to the public school that they would have gone to at first. Reporting for KTBS 3 News, I'm Keristen Holmes.